What is going on, guys? It's Black Friday, and this Black Friday, there's going to be a slew of content to cover for FFBE. Obviously, this is going to be the review for Agent Olive, as well as Mastermind Xon, Dr. Aiden in Operative Zyrus. But today, I'm also going to be doing another video for the bundles, and then I'm going to be doing another video on the support reroll banner for you guys out there who are contemplating doing the support reroll banner, and my opinions on what you should be trying to reroll for, if at all. So don't make sure that you miss out on those videos. Don't make sure you miss out. Make sure you don't miss those videos. I guess we'll go with that one. But do hit that subscribe button if you want to see that content. There's going to be a bunch more stuff this weekend as well, because there's so much stuff to cover in FFBE. Now, I've been trying to do a little bit more of a slimmer review and not talk about a bunch of the other garbage abilities. So let's try to get all of these characters in there as fast as possible while maintaining all of that information that you guys so deserve. Now, her TMR here, Agent Olive, very, very strong advanced weaponry, 100% true double hand with a little bit of limit burst gauge generation per turn. So if you're looking for a true double hand, you don't have Buster Style yet, it's going to be right there for you. It's going to activate her trust passive as well. Very strong. Her super TMR is going to be very, very powerful. 174 attack, two-handed gun, as well as giving you 50% attack and 30% limit burst damage. So this is a much better version of CG Jake's gun. Very, very powerful if you're looking to use a two-handed gun on a character. Now, Agent Olive is going to be a chain finisher, burst damage character that does Stardust Stray and Bolting Strike damage. She does have a couple of skills that go ahead and are applicable to these chaining frames. She's going to have the main chaining frame family of Bolting Strike, though. She does have Stardust Stray. She doesn't really use Stardust Stray to do a bunch of damage. She has the ability to imbue fire as well as dark. She does have fire and dark imperils, but unless you're using two different Agent Olives in balancing how you're using imperils between the two of them, you won't have 100% uptime. That is because her imperil is associated with her Immolation Blast cooldown, 7-turn cooldown, available on turn 1, 100% imperil for 3 turns to all enemies, and negates 2 physical attacks. 7-turn cooldown, 3-turn imperil. You're gonna need to bounce that back and forth between your two Olives. She does have one other imperiling skill, and that is going to be her Magnus ability, Blackout. Now remember, Magnus abilities, guys, are very, very powerful. Think of them like cooldown skills, but they also have a single use or a limited amount of uses. Most of them are single use. Some of the characters have more than one use, but Blackout here is one use per fight. Doesn't matter if you die, doesn't matter if you get kicked out of the fight with a snort. You use it, you can't use it ever again. It's going to be 120% fire and dark imperil. So those are her imperils, guys. Let's get into her other skills here. Her main skill that we talked about before is Cannon Fire Scattering Shot. This is going to be a Bolting Strike skill. That's why it's her main chaining frame family. 3.5 mod base, goes up to an 8.0 after you cast it a couple of times. 3 casts makes it an 8-point mod in the first couple of hits. And then it's going to chain cap itself, basically. So it'll be backloaded with a 4.0 multiplier with ignore 50% defense. This is going to get a couple of multiplier increases. It will eventually arrive at a 26.0 mod when you use one of her other cooldown skills for a couple of turns. She does have Quick Blast, which allows her to dual cast her skills. She does have a chain finishing skill of Cannon Fire, which is a 9.0 mod with ignore 50% defense, recovers 125 MP to the caster as well. This will also, I do believe, cap out eventually at like a 23, 26 times multiplier chain capping skill, and you will eventually, you could use this, like I said before, by balancing the 2 different Immolation Blasts for the 2 different imperils over and over with 2 Olives. You'll go Scattering Shot, Immolation Blast, or Immolation Blast, Scattering Shot, and then you'll go Scattering Shot, Cannon Fire, and that'll allow you, for the one Olive who's using the imperil, not really going to be able to chain with that imperiling skill, and then the other Olive, instead of firing off a chaining skill that with no chaining frame partner and breaking the chain and being very sad, you can go ahead and fill it up with the 120mm cannon there. So that's something to think about if you can get that to work. Something to think about. Now, bioweapon here is going to be her 250% attack buff, little bit of limit burst gauge, crystals to all allies, 5 to 10. This is going to give her a multiplier increase of 3.0 for 4 turns. This is going to make those big multipliers go up to like 26 times multipliers overall. She does have Immolation Blast, as we talked about. And we have Cannon Fire Obliteration. Now, this is going to be a unique-ish skill. It's going to be a 70% defense break for 3 turns, so not a full-time breaker for all of the stats, but it is a 3-turn cooldown available on turn 1, 70% defense break for 3 turns, so that's going to give you a lot of uptime of 100%, but especially between 2 different Agent Olives for your defense break at least. On top of that, it's going to give you Rapid Blast, which is her triple cast skill, And then it's going to do a unique thing where after 3 turns, it's going to land a 13 times mod, ignore 50% defense, which is an additional 26 times mod. So she gets a little bit of extra bonus damage, which is going to help you do that burst damage. Now, speaking of burst damage, you can set it up with cannon fire, 3-turn delay, 26 times multiplier. Then we have blackout, which is 120% dark and fire and peril for 1 turn, a 300% attack buff for 1 turn, and it's going to be 150 times multiplier to all enemies here. Very, very, very strong one-hit skill. You can't triple cast this, you can't dual cast this. So if you're using blackout by itself, so you're going to be wanting to do that. And that's going to be a lot of extra damage. Remember, you're going to get the 13 times multiplier, ignore 50% defense. You can set this up so this lands, and then on the same turn, you use blackout and chain finish that, possibly with some supports. And that's going to be a lot of damage right there. 1 use per battle, though. A lot of attack passives here. She's got 150% true double hand in attack. She's got several 50% attack passive equipped with a gun, so you want a gun on her, whether it's her own super TMR or just some other two-handed gun that you have available. And then she's got a lot of attack passives on top of that. 30% attack here, 50% attack with a gun, 20% dodge, 50% true double hand from Lady Danger. You definitely want her trust ability activated because it's going to give you 100% true double hand, 50% attack with clothing or light armor, increased modifiers, auto cast rapid blast at the start of the battle, so you'll have triple cast right away, 60% attack period, and then 50% more attack when equipped with the gun, as well as some HP and MP passives and defense and spirit passives. So she's not going to be the tankiest person in the world, but she does have some decent passives when it comes to HP and MP. I think she's got like 60% HP, 30% defense, spirit. On top of that, a little bit of dodge as well. So a lot of attack passives, 150% true double hand passive, like we said. Remember, her TMR is another 100%, so you only need to have 50% more true double hand from some sort of external source. Her other skill here is she's going to auto cast just like normal Olive did, cannon fire, mortar shot at the start of the battle, which you're going to start the fight, and then during turn 1, you do whatever you want. Then during turn 2, she's going to do a little bit of bonus damage here with mortar shot. It's going to land 16 times multiplier. Boom, 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 boom. Cool stuff there. And then we'll get into her Luma Burst, which I think I'm personally a little underwhelmed with. It's going to give you, for a cost of 45 Luma Burst crystals, a 200% attack buff for 2 turns. Rapid blast for 4 turns, so her triple cast. Then it's going to be a 10 times multiplier, ignore 50% defense. And then auto cast next turn, another 10 times multiplier, ignore 50% defense. So a 20 times mod right away, and then a 20 times mod later. It's only a 1-hit skill, so you need to chain finish this. But I do believe Heavy Artillery does get a bonus from her cooldown skill, if I'm not. Yeah, so her cooldown skill bioweapon actually will give a 3 times mod increase to Heavy Artillery here. So it's going to be, guess what, the favorite number, 26 times multiplier right away, and then a 26 times multiplier later. My main problem with this skill is that it's going to auto cast, and it's a 1-hit skill. I don't think you're going to be fast enough to chain finish the auto cast. You can obviously do some supporter shenanigans, right? We have Seiji, Lydon, Fina, Sylvie, and stuff like that to make any characters chain together, maybe even Pod 153 if you're still on that hype train from 2004. Yeah, this is fine. 26 times mod, that's lower than usual. Then another 26 times mod. If you can't chain finish the second one, which I don't think you guys are going to be able to, that's a little bit weak for the cost of 45 Luma Burst crystals there. If you can, though, that'd be really cool. Or if they made this some sort of like the second castle, like a chaining thing that you got for free, that'd be cool too. But as far as how strong is she, she's a very strong, very relevant damage dealer in FFBE. Do you have to go and get her? Is she going to break the meta or anything of that nature? No. The most awkward part about her is that she, on some parts, chains, on some parts, chain finishes. So you have to build your party where you have to have some way to build a party where you can have other units chain for you and she can chain finish. Some of you out there can do that, right? Like we talked about, Sylvie allows people to do that. As well as characters like Seiji, Lydon, Fina, as well as items that float around there. And then there's the escape where certain items in materia that exist as TMRs will allow you to have certain characters chained together as well. So if you don't have the option to do that, she's going to fall a little bit short for you. If you don't want to have to balance, when do I chain finish, she's going to fall a little bit short for you there as well. But if that sounds fun and interesting and team comp building is your thing, then Agent Olive is going to be right up your alley. Next up, though, we have Mastermind Xon. So I'm going to let you guys know he's not absolutely broken, but he does do some very broken things, potentially, that you guys may have missed if you looked over this character before. He's got one thing. You can't see my hand. One thing that could be incredibly broken, and it's way outside the box, and you have to be a mastermind to think of it. That's why we're on this channel, ladies and gentlemen. So the TMR here is Untraceable Phone. Really not that good. I'm not going to lie. I don't like this TMR at all. It's a damage dealing TMR. You're going to want it on him to proc his trust ability. It offers no attacking stats, no offensive stats whatsoever. The effect of Bounty Call in Libra and stuff, common and rare drop rates increase 50%. He doesn't really need that. Decreased chance of being targeted 50%. That's kind of cool. Doesn't really need that. HP and MP defenses. He's a damage dealer. Doesn't really need that. He actually already has rare item finder and common item finder in his kit. So he really doesn't need that either. His STMR, 165 attack, one-handed dagger, gives you 30% physical dodge, enables dual wielding and 100% high tide. So this can be used for a lot of things out there. I think the main thing a lot of people will use this for is some sort of dodge build, obviously, or on some sort of support. If you're part of the Bowie Knife support train where you put High Tide Plus on a Bowie Knife and you equip another dagger in your support's other hand and put a High Tide Plus item world roll on that as well, this is going to be like your God tier Bowie Knife. It's going to give your support dual wields. It's going to give them 100% High Tide. It's going to give them the ability to roll High Tide Plus on it because it is a dagger, so you can have 250% High Tide in one weapon that enables dual wield and gives your support dodge. So it's going to make your character tankier. You can have up to 400% dodge with two weapons. If you had two of these for some reason, then your support could have 500% High Tide with just their weapons. I guess very strong, much wow, but very strong for that reason. Obviously, you can put this on a damage dealer as well, but for damage dealers, most of the characters that are trying to dual wield, they already have dual wield. High Tide's kind of cool, and the dodge thing's like kind of neat. Unless you're trying to do something weird like build a 100% provoke dodge damage dealing unit, whatever, which I don't really suggest because your damage dealer is probably your damage dealer always, but it allows you to do some wonky stuff. But I think the most abusable route is going to be with your supports in the High Tide builds. Now, the thing that you're going to notice about this boy here, Mastermind Xon, he does have your traditional Xon stuff. He's got Grand Waylay, he's got Escape, he's got Stealth so he can hide for a turn. Then he's got a lot of chaining frame families. He's got Bolting Strike, Stardust Ray, Absolute Zero, Absolute Mirror of Equity, as well as Auroral Ray here. These skills all range between 15 and 18 times multipliers, and that's really where they all are. There's no elements associated with them, so if you can chain with somebody, you're good to go. He does have the option to triple cast as well later down the line. So good to go there as well. You can keep up with triple cast. Anything beyond triple cast, he's not really going to be a fan of doing there. The differences between all of these skills, outside of the small multiplier changes between some of them, in the chaining frames, there's really not that big of a deal because they're just random status ailments. So you have like some with poison, some with disease, sleep, whatever. Not that big of a deal. Now we're going to get into his mirror skills here. And instead of going through and describing each and all of them in specific detail, which would take forever, I'm going to tell you briefly kind of how they work. So we have Survival Mirror, which copies effects from an ally to himself. We have Elemental Mirror, which copies effects from an ally to himself. We have Critical Mirror, which copies effects from an ally to himself. The only ones that are unique and different that are crazy, you can do cool things, and I think the two that stand out are going to be Elemental Imbues as well as Limit Burst Damage. The rest of the stuff, not that big of a deal. Copying High Tide, copying Charm Resist, Status Element Resist, Attachments, Magic, and Spirit buffs, Killers, stuff like that, elemental resistances, charm immunity, all that stuff. If those kind of buffs are on your team, they were probably put there by an AoE effect, right? AoE attack buff, AoE defense buff, AoE magic buff, AoE spirit buff, AoE elemental resistance buffs. You know, damage he doesn't even copy damage mitigation, but AoE HP and MP restoration, auto revive. Yeah, you can probably, that's probably an okay one as well. Someone would be like auto revive, stop and charm resist. Like those are all bard type buffs that are put on by a unit to your whole party. The ones that kind of stand out are, to me, like I said, Imbues and Limit Burst Damage. This will allow you to do cool stuff with him, like with someone like Seiji Hio or King Rain or whatever have you, where King Rain will fire Imbue himself, put up that nice 200% Limit Burst Damage, or in Hio's case, 275% Limit Burst Damage buff. Xon can be like, that looks pretty neat. Fire Imbue, 275% Limit Burst Damage buff. And I mentioned those two characters because his Limit Burst does chain with Extreme Nova, which is going to be their Limit Burst as well. So those are the two things that stand out. These other skills, though, like copying stat buffs and stuff like that, not that big of a deal. Those buffs are coming out 99% of the time from some sort of AoE scenario. Anyhow, don't really need to talk about them all that much. Now, we also have Reciprocal Mirror, which is going to be pretty much single target Twist of Fate without the Dispel. So Twist of Fate dispels and steals all of the buffs on an enemy outside of physical mitigation, magic mitigation, and general mitigation, which this new Xon cannot steal either, and it's going to reciprocally copy them from the enemy to himself. Now, Twist of Fate copies them to your whole party. This new Xon copies them to himself and doesn't dispel them. So a little bit of a buff there where you don't have to put your imperils and stuff back on. A little bit of downside where you have to dispel them anyway. Because if you're copying an Attack, Defense, Magic, Spirit buff, all this other crazy stuff, you probably want to dispel all of that stuff off of the enemy. So, and it only gives him to himself. Now, he does have W cast here for his skills. He also has triple reflector cast. Now, we're not done with the mirror skills yet, with reflector yet. He has got Mystical Mirror, which is manufactured Nethicite with 1 stack of Mirage. So pretty neat, whatever. It's another one of those characters that's got manufactured Nethicite. Manufactured Nethicite is one of those things where it's like, it gives you a pretty cool advantage in 1 fight out of every 1,000 fights. So not a reason to pull for him, but I'm going to mention it. Now we have Projected Mirror here. And this skill is copy status effects for 4 turns from the caster to all allies. What this does is it lets you copy Twist of Fate. Right? You use Reciprocal Mirror to steal all the buffs off of the enemy to yourself, and then use Projected Mirror to copy it and put it on your whole party. Now, the other most broken thing that I can think of that you can do with Projected Mirror is, like I said, Limit Burst damage buff. Except in this instance, you cannot do Limit Burst damage buff. You can copy Limit Burst damage buffs with Critical Mirror from an ally to yourself for 2 turns, but it does not let you spread it back out. So if you were thinking about doing Limit Burst damage buff, I've seen that floating around. It would be really good, except it's Limit Burst gauge fill rate, not Limit Burst damage buff. It would be really cool if you could copy your Awake or your King Rain to him and then give your whole party 250% Limit Burst damage. Would be really cool. Can't do it. Sorry. Thief of the Night. 2 turn cooldown available on turn 1. You can dual cast this one with double up. 20 times multiplier. 1 turn of Attack, Defense, Magic, and Spirit Break. 70% for 1 turn. So if he is alone as your only Xon in your party, he cannot be your full-time breaker. If you have 2 Xons in your party, though, what you can do is one use Thief of the Night, and one of them use the Bolting Strike damage dealing skill, and then you swap. So then the other one uses Thief of the Night, Bolting Strike damage skill. But you just swap back and forth between who uses Thief of the Night every other turn or so. Then the last one, Black Mirror, actually makes me upset. And I'm not talking about the TV show. I'm talking about this skill here. So it's 1 use per battle. It is his Magnus ability. Big time skill. And I think this one actually fell really flat. So 1 use per battle. Copy status effects for 5 turns from 1 enemy to the caster. It does the same thing Reciprocal Mirror does. Literally does the same thing. Reciprocal Mirror copies them for 3 turns. Black Mirror copies them for 5 turns. The only thing that Black Mirror will copy that the other one doesn't do is Limit Burst damage. There's no boss in the game that gives itself a Limit Burst damage buff because bosses can't even Limit Burst. So even though we don't have a boss right now, I don't think we'll ever see in the future a boss that gives itself a buff to Limit Burst damage that Xon's going to be able to copy. Unless, of course, they're watching this right now and they're like, well, show that guy. Kefka Plus will go ahead and put a Limit Burst damage buff up just for... No, it's never going to happen, guys. Literally, his Black Mirror skill just copies effects that you could already copy with Reciprocal Mirror for 2 turns longer. Also, Black Mirror, you cannot dual or triple cast it. So if you're using Black Mirror, that's all you're doing. So why not just cast Reciprocal Mirror and do something else on the same turn? Who knows? Going into his passives here, this is the most broke thing that we're going to be able to do. This is the real broke thing. We'll get into it. He's got 150% True Dual Wielding passive, 6 times Mastery for True Dual Mastery. Very strong there. 80% Camouflage. He does have the ability to obtain Gil when stealing. Very cool there. If you're worried about him having like the rare item finder and common item finder, he has that 100%. He's got 100% Gil finder. He does have 50% physical evasion too, so maybe if you want him to tank for you. Then the 15 to 18 times multipliers we were talking about, they all get a 5 times multiplier buff. So the stuff like Dazed and Confused, etc., etc., etc. All of this stuff up here, right, where it either does death or 18 times multiplier. These will get a 5 times mod increase, so 23, like pretty good times multiplier increases there. And if you're looking at these things like how do these work, if the boss is immune to death, it's not going to try to death it. So there shouldn't be a point where if you're using 2 Xons, like one's like, oh, we're fighting a boss, all right, instead of doing damage, I'm going to try to hit him with an immune death. It should not happen like that unless it's coded wrong. But it shouldn't be that way. I haven't heard any reports of that. That's not how those skills are supposed to work. And it doesn't seem like they're working that way. But 23 times multipliers there. Now let's get into the last thing here. Enable Smoke Bomb when HP drops below 20%. Enables the use of Smoke Bomb. Smoke Bomb is a skill that costs 50 MP that negates the next 5 physical attacks for 1 turn to your entire party. Now, this is the most broken thing you can do with this character. You have to figure out a weird way to enable him to cast Smoke Bomb every turn. If you do that, you're going to be able to cast a 5 stack of Mirage for your entire party every turn. You may have the ability to do this. You may not have the ability to do this depending on what sort of gear you have. You can do weird stuff like Cursed Ring or Deleta in combination with dual casting like Gravity and then Re-Raise on him. So what happens is you Gravity him after the Subservient ticks, or the Cursed Ring plus Subservient ticks his HP down, you Gravity him, and he'll fall below 20% max HP. Smoke Bomb unlocks. You cast Smoke Bomb. You put Re-Raise on him. He either dies during the boss's turn and Re-Raises because you have a magic tank out there, so you're blocking all the magic damage. You're dodging all the physical attacks. Maybe he finally gets hit, goes down, or maybe he's 100% dodge, so he can't die no matter what unless he gets hit by like a non-elemental, non-coverable attack or whatever. But you want him to die anyway. You want him to die and him get hit by a Re-Raise. So what happens is he doesn't die on the enemy's turn, comes back to your turn. Guess what happens? Subservient ticks or Cursed Ring ticks, kills him, comes back to life, re-unlocks Smoke Bomb. By gravitying him to put Re-Raise on him again, cast Smoke Bomb, go through the cycle, Smoke Bomb, 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 Smoke Bomb. If you can get that to work, cast this every turn, that's going to give you some weird, sneaky shenanigans. The most shenanigans mastermind thing you can do in FFBE to this date is being able to literally cast Gravity on your Xon, put a Re-Raise on him as well, Smoke Bomb, Smoke Bomb, Smoke Bomb, give him some sort of thing that like gets him poisoned or some sort of thing where it ticks his HP down at the start of your turn. There's a lot of different things. Curse Ring, the item, delete a Super Team R Subservient. That'll help you do that. So think about it. If you have the ability to do that, that might be a reason for you to, come out and start cheesing some things with 5 physical attacks worth of dodging stuff on those attacks that you can dodge with Mirage on your whole party. 5 stacks of Mirage, very strong there. His last thing also gives him the ability to dodge 2 physical attacks for 3 turns to all allies and change with Extreme Nova here. 30 times multiplier. Not going to do the most crazy amount of damage, but like I said, you can, copy a Hio's Luma Burst damage buff, copy a Awaken Rains, or Awaken Rain. I'm still doing it. Eldor CG Rains, Awaken Luma Burst there. Yeah, the Awakened Luma Burst, Shining Nova, whatever. Anyway, so outside of the crazy like cast Smoke Bomb thing, I don't really like Xon that much at all. I don't think he's really worth it. You guys asked for a 7-star Xon. I told you guys 7-star Xon really wouldn't be all that good because he's like a supportive thing. If there's any sort of thing where Twist of Fate is good because the buff you steal is so broken, then by definition, the buff is so strong that you want to take a 4-star into the fight. If the buff is that strong, you're taking a 4-star base character into the fight, then by having that character in your party, the 4-star, you don't need anything else. You're stealing the most overpowered buff anyway in the game. So it didn't really matter that we were going to get a 7-star Xon that can kind of mimic Twist of Fate. Now the Smoke Bomb thing, if you can get that to work, I want to see it, record it. It's going to be amazing. Send that to me. But the next one we're going to talk about here is Operative Zyrus. He's going to be really easy to go over. His TMR is insane. Top operative, 30% MP in magic, 20% magic will cope with a rod as well. 50% true double hand magic. His STMR, very high stat stick, 175 magic, but then with 75% mechas, or 50%, excuse me, magic against machines and 75% magic killer against dragons. He does hate dragons way more than he hates machines. Now, Operative Zyrus is going to have a little bit of an easy kit to go over. He's going to have stacking buffs to dragons and machine monsters. So it goes from 50% or 75% to 100% to 125% and falls off. Then he's got the ability to put up some imperils as well. The 3 elements he's going to have the mastery over is dark, lightning, and ice. Okay, and these imperils go 75, 100, 120%, similar to his buffs to killers do, which means you want to kind of ramp him up and then explode on somebody, which is exactly what his kit does do. With these different things. Now, the other thing, he's got lightning, ice, and dark. Each of these different elements also has a different chaining family associated with it. So Lightning is Bolting Strike, Dark is Chaos Wave Awakened, and Ice is Absolute Zero. So if you want to be able to min-max, I need lightning magic damage for this fight, you need someone who does lightning magic damage, Bolting Strike, Chaining Frames, which pretty much I think at this point is still Operative Zyrus. So he's very flexible, but he's only flexible pretty much with another copy of Operative Zyrus for the most part, because he wants to do very certain things, like most units do. I don't want to call it a drawback. That's my stance on you using dupes versus not dupes. It's always better to use a dupe because not only do the chaining frames match and their multipliers are very similar, so you expect the same amount of damage, the rotations are the same too. So they'll always want to imperil at the same time. They'll always want to Luma Burst at the same time. They'll always want to do XYZ, quad cast, triple cast all at the same time. Now, another skill that makes him very, very strong is Living Dangerously. Hurts him for 40% of his HP. That's a plus, though, because it's an activated very strong Limit Burst. It's going to be the threshold to activate a Limit Burst. Give him 40% of his MP back, give him 200% High Tide, and give him 20 flat Limit Burst crystals. That's going to be a thing he does there as well. Now, moving into the rest of his kit here, he does have Elemental Infiltration, which is going to give 120% Ice, Lightning, and Dark Imperil for 4 turns to all enemies. Give himself a 200% Magic and Spirit buff for 4 turns to the caster. Give him 5 turns of Quadruple Cast. He has another cooldown skill that gives him 2 turns of Quadruple Cast, so in case he dies or something, you can get that Quadruple Cast back up with another skill. It also is going to be a 74% Spirit Break for 4 turns to one enemy, and it's going to do a little bit of damage with a 10 times multiplier. Ignore 50% Spirit, so a 20 times mod, but it's a non-elemental, and this is going to be the Absolute Zero Chaining Frame family. So if you're using this skill as part of one of his quad cast skills, get the break up, you're going to want to use an Absolute Zero skill, then go back to the other skills. Nothing super insane there. Now, he does have his 3 main damage dealing skills: 1 Bolting Strike, 1 Chaos Wave, 1 Absolute Zero, and you've guessed it, Lightning, Ice, Dark damage. All the same multiplier, so Beggar's Choosers be your choice. It's split up between a backloaded hit and then, you know, a low mod for the first couple of hits, and they'll go 1.0 mod for the first several hits, and then the backloaded thing will be a 12 times multiplier. That's all of them. He does have a very strong, very powerful build-defining, character-defining Magnus skill called Blacklisted. 1 use per battle. All right, these big damage-dealing skills we were talking about, the Voltaic Scepter, the Shadowy Voltaic Spectre. Voltaic Scepter is like a magic card. Voltaic Spectre, Shadowy Spectre, Cold-Blooded Spectre, all get an 8 times mod increase. Now remember, 8 times sounds pretty low, but you get an 8 times mod increase to the last part as well as the first part. So it goes from this to a 9.0 mod and a 20.0 mod. So it's going to be a 29 times multiplier right there. He does have a couple other small multiplier buffs, but these are going to be like 30 times multipliers on his big burst skill. Very, very strong 30 times multiplier buffs right then and there. He also has Enigmatic Finisher, which you can't dual cast, you can't quad cast, you can't triple cast. You're not going to use this skill. I don't know why it's here. It's actually garbage. That's pretty much going to be that. He has physical magical killers against dragons and machine monsters as a passive. He has 50% magic, 100% magic, true double hand. I ignore fatal passive, 50% lightning and dark resist, 50% magic here. Another 1.5 multiplier increase to those skills as well. So like we said, applying to both parts of 3.0 total. Very strong, which 3.0 total here plus this right here. So the 20 during his big burst phase, it's going to be 11 times multiplier to both sides. So it's going to be a total of 22 mod increase. So 22 plus 12, big time, 34. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Very high, very, 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 very high multipliers here on this character due to all of this good stuff here. So a little bit over 30 times mod on those skills that you can quad cast. Now remember, we want to be ramping up with this character. Also, don't forget he has a Dragon and Machine Killer again. And then 50% magic and spirit when true double handing. And then his upgraded Luma Burst for 3 turns with HP drops below 65%, which is going to make those things even a little bit higher than 30 times multiplier due to the fact that his upgraded Luma Burst will give you a permanent 2 times mod on top of that. So you'll have the 8 plus the 2 plus the 1.5. So 10.5 times multiplier applied to both parts of this. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So 8, 9, 10. 11.5 mod increase in total. So during your big burst turn, 11.5 mod increase total, you're going to have 12 plus 11.5, 23.5. 23.5 plus another, what is this going to be, 12 something? 30, so it's going to be like a 36 times multiplier, 37 times multiplier. Very high damage, guys. Very, very high damage for that burst turn. Now, how are you going to use this character? What makes him so good? You need timing. You need to time the Magnus skill. So basically what you're going to want to do, right? You want to time the Magnus skill for when your stacks are maxed out, which doesn't take very long, like 1 turn. So you want to, you know, cast whatever damage skill you're going to be doing a couple of times. You want your stacks maxed out. You want to have quad cast enabled for the turn you're using blacklisted and the turn after. And you want to have 120% imperil for whatever skill you're doing. So what you do, you have your imperils set up, you have your buffs set up, you have, you know, your breaks and stuff set up from your other characters as well if you want to. He does have a 74% spirit break, which allows him to set all this stuff up. Once you're set up, good to go, you quad cast, you go blacklisted, and then damage skill, damage skill, damage skill, all going to be like 37 times multipliers. And then the turn after that, you'll still have blacklisted because it lasts for 2 turns, the turn you cast it and the turn after. And then you just damage skill, damage skill, damage skill, damage skill. And that's going to be your big burst damage. But how is he outside of his big burst damage? Outside of his big burst damage, he's pretty okay. Seiji, Lydon, Fina, not Seiji, Lydon, Fina, Seiji, White Lotus, Dark, Fina was like the first character's like pretty much permanent quadricast, just like he has as well, where he re-unlocks it with the cooldown skill over and over. And her multipliers are always right around a 20-ish times multiplier. He will fare around a, what's it going to be? It's going to be 12, 13, 14, 15, like a 16 times multiplier on average. At the start of the fight, he's got a little bit higher multipliers, but you need to build up for blacklisted anyway. But he's gonna have 16 minimum, where she's like 20-ish minimum, but he's got the huge burst damage stuff as well. So if you're deciding between the two of them, it's beggars choosers, doesn't matter, whatever sprite you like better. Operative Zyrus is here. We don't know what kind of banner CG White Lotus Dark Fina is going to be on or anything like that. Whether she's going to be USCable, she's going to be on a solar banner or whatever it is. But he's very powerful, very strong. If you're looking for a good damage dealer, he's going to be right up your alley. Last is Dr. Aiden. I'm going to call him the Comeback King. Okay, he's going to be the Comeback King. His TMR, very powerful. We've heard of it before. It gives immunity to all status elements on anyone. If you put it on himself, it's going to give him an MP refresh as well as camouflage 50%. Also has 65 spirit, 25 defense. The super TMR is medical staff. Nothing super insane. 155 spirit, 15% HP, and 2 limit burst gauge crystals per turn. Dr. Aiden is very good at a couple of things here. Now, you keep talking about how damage dealers have their own attack buffs and magic buffs nowadays, which means you kind of only need someone to buff your defense and spirit. Dr. Aiden does have the ability to have permanent defense and spirit buffs ranging from 130 to 170% defense and spirit buffs. You guys, you can see on antibodies boost, 130% spirit buff for your whole party with a little bit of an HP heal. Plasma boost, 130% spirit buff here with 60% MP heal. I think I said spirit for the first one, but it's defense. The first one's defense, second one's spirit, 130. He's got stronger buffs later on. He's got preventive measures, which gives 1 stack of Mirage to 1 person, but he does have 30% physical damage mitigation on top of that. And as general mitigation moves into the tank slot, if you have any of the newer tanks, you have your tanks doing general mitigation for you, and he can do physical as your healer, which is pretty cool there. So he can do defense and spirit buff and physical mitigation while your tank does cover as well as general mitigation. He's got double treatment here, and then he's got the holy grail, or as it, of the full ribbon status protection. So stop, cure, charm, cure, as well as prevention for stop, charm, attachments, magic, spirit break, all of the whole shebang, the whole folk of things. So all of the breaks, all of the status elements, stop and charm, he can both prevent and cure for 5 turns. So very strong there. These are the operate full immunization and potent disinfectant. So he's got all that covered for you as well. He does have triple cast white magic. So if you're a newer player and you want to have Kiraja Raise or whatever, you need that extra spell to do the full heal, you have options for that as well. He also has options for 65% defense and spirit breaks as a healer for a single target, which is pretty powerful. They do break himself, but since we just talked about having the whole attachments, magic, and spirit break resistant for 5 turns, that downside is pretty much gone. He also has 150% defense and spirit buffs for 3 turns to all allies as well. It doesn't affect himself, but this is a second way for him to buff up defense and spirit. He's got additional ones. He's got Operation Resuscitation, but it's Operate Resuscitation. It's a full revive from the dead to your whole party. Then at the start of the next turn, it's going to give them all AoE revive of 30% HP. The main thing here to take away is that he does have the full life for your whole party as a skill. The auto revive thing is kind of cute, kind of neat or whatever. It's 1 turn auto revive, 30% HP, pretty neat, but nothing super crazy. He does have an apple a day, 5 turn cooldown available in turn 1, 100% HP heal to your whole party, 3000 HP barrier, and he's going to give his own operate antibodies boost and sterilization of 5 multiplier increase for 3 turns. What a doctor ordered. This is yet another way for him to buff stats. This time it's all stats: attack, defense, magic, and spirit of 170% for 3 turns. This is the only source of attack and magic buff, but like we said, not that big of a deal. Most of the characters that are physical magical damage dealers, they buff their own attack and magic now by higher amounts anyways. 300% or 3000 HP barrier and 200% high tide. So a big buff skill. So you want that defense and spirit buff on turn 1. You can get defense and spirit buff from him as well as attack and magic on turn 1 with 1 skill. Get the HP barrier, get the high tide, and then do something else on top of that if you want to. He does have spoonful of sugar. Okay, this one's gonna be pretty interesting. 10 turn cooldown available on turn 1 because everyone AoE auto revive for 3 turns, 80%, as well as a 3000 HP barrier. Then at the start of your next turn, it revives all allies except for the caster. Now, here's the differentiation. What makes it a little bit cooler possibly is if this auto revive actually lets that character use an action. So you have a damage dealer, you give them auto revive, they die, they come back, they die. Start of your turn, they come back, and they can attack that same turn. If they can do that, that's pretty neat. Is it game breaking? Not really, but will it be a nice little buff? For sure. It'd be pretty awesome if it did happen. Otherwise, usually if you have auto revive, your damage dealer dies, comes back, dies again. Your healer just revives a couple people and you're good to go. But being able to kind of cheese it that way, remember it's a 10 turn cooldown. If it happens once, you get through a threshold, you can attack again. That'll be pretty cool. Under the Weather gives him the ability to add Dark Imperil to the enemies of 100%, as well as Dark Resistance buff to your team by 100% for 4 turns. It also is AoE Dark Imbue for your whole party for 2 turns as well. Now the problem with this is 7 turn cooldown, so there's no full uptime. If you need to do dark damage consistently on a fight, this isn't really going to do a whole lot for you. If you're looking for a one-shot strategy, then he's got the Dark Imperil, he's got the Dark Imbue for you as well. So if you're going to one-shot a boss, it's going to be something he can do for you. If you're going to try to not one-shot a boss, you just need consistent damage that's darkness. You need a consistent Dark Imperil, you need a consistent Dark Imbue. Not really going to do anything for you here in the long run. You have Taste Your Own Medicine. Now this is going to help out a lot of newer players that are doing physical draw attack builds, or draw attack builds on tanks who don't have the draw attack yet. So if you're still using provoke, we've seen it. I've gone through it. Your provoke tank dies, right? No re-raise, or dies, re-raises, dies again. You get to your turn. You need to raise him. And you really want him to provoke again because he's your single target tank. You don't have anything else. Back in the day, it was raise him up, hope that you don't get wrecked. Now, Taste Your Own Medicine is a 10 turn cooldown on turn 1. It makes Aiden 100% provoke for 1 turn, gives him a 200% spirit buff for 1 turn, and gives him 20 stacks of Mirage for 1 turn. So this will allow a newer player to go, okay, my provoke tank died, raise my provoke tank, and then instead of going, I don't have provoke right now, though I raised him up, but I don't have provoke. Instead of going, oh me, you provoke with you get to provoke with your healer who will not die because they have 20 stacks of Mirage, 200% spirit buff. You should be good to go. So that's a cool cooldown there. You also counter and do a little bit of damage, but nothing insane. But if you've outgrown this if you've been using a draw attack build, because with draw attacks, you have passive 100% provoke on a tank. So you can raise your tank up and your tank's just like, yeah, I'm already provoking. You don't have that downside of needing to provoke with your tank, but can't because you already have it with the draw attacks build. So how good this kind of a skill is going to be is based on, the gear that you have in the game. If you have a draw attacks build, not going to be that big of a deal for you. If you already have if you're working on one though, it could be a good bit of a, not like a bump in power for your team, but it could be a little bit of a comeback mechanic, like I said, where it'll save. Then we have Operate Black Self here. This is going to be his Magnus skill, 2 uses, 10,000 HP barrier for 3 turns, 1 ally, full HP and MP restoration, cures all status ailments, as well as attack, defense, magic, and spirit break. I would use this honestly on a damage dealer to help them survive thresholds. Most damage dealers, 10,000 to 15,000 HP. Giving them an extra 10,000 HP, definitely going to let them survive a lot of stuff there with random targets, etc., non-coverable attacks. That's what you're going to use this for. Get through certain thresholds. When using it on a tank and stuff, sure, you can full HP, some barrier, but damage dealers is where it's going to be because that 10,000 HP barrier, the smaller your HP pool is, the more relevant that barrier is going to be. As far as passives and stuff go, he's got a couple counters in here. He's got physical, magical evasion. He's immune to blind and sleep and all that cool stuff. He does have 50% single wield spirit in there. He also has an HP lock, I do believe. When you hit 50% HP, you will get a 200% spirit buff for 3 turns. So it's not really a lock on HP there, but that is the Oh, 200% spirit buff is going to make you heal extra as a newer player. And then he does have Alive and Kicking, which is the HP spirit like I wanted to talk about. Ignore fatal damage, 80% proc rate when your HP is above 30%. This has a three procs. 3 procs on this. So a lot of spirit passives, some HP passives as well, some physical and magical passives, true double hand spirit as well. And he's got Doctor's Note and Involuntary Reflex here, which will heal on counter 10% HP / 10% MP depending on which counter goes off, and it's going to give a 1000 HP barrier for 3 turns to all allies on top of that. Secondary opinion, when the battle starts, he's going to start the fight. Aiden will, with a 2000 HP barrier. He has triple cast white magic, so he does have Curage, he does have Full Life, he does have Re-Raise, he does have Dispel, but no Dispelga. So no Dispelga here. I know a lot of you, that's one of the main uses for triple cast white magic is Dispelga, Re-Raise, Curaja, or Dispelga, Curaja, Full Life. But he does not have Dispelga, so he does have Dispel, but not Dispelga. So if you need to go ahead and Dispel a whole party and stuff, not really going to be able to do that part. But he does have a Luma Burst here, Optimal Treatment. A lot of you guys didn't like this. AoE 4-turn auto revive. All right, recovers 4000 HP, massive HP regeneration. At the start of the next turn, you get a 3000 HP barrier, and it's going to cure your attack, defense, magic, and spirit break. Very powerful character, Dr. Aiden is. Where would I rank him? Listen, I still think I would adhere to my #1 healer video. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out because those characters are very powerful as well. Very, very new player friendly. Very, very progressive as far as comeback mechanics go, and in a fight, Dr. Aiden allows you to do some unique things. I think the main thing to take away is he can be your main defense and spirit buffer and stuff like that. The one thing he's missing in his kit, he doesn't have any sort of Luma Burst generation. He doesn't have Entrust or anything of that nature. So if that's more of your jam, then Lena and Myra are definitely who you need to look at, and that's why I adhere to the video I made before Dr. Aiden came out. But he does do some very cool stuff with the physical mitigation, defense, and spirit buffs, as well as the comeback mechanics. But the older you are, the more the more you have a veteran account, the more well-made your team is. Even if you're not playing as a veteran, but the more well-made your team is, and the more damage mitigation you have in your team, etc., 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 the less damage your team takes overall. The less damage people take, the less people die, and the less you need comeback mechanics like Dr. Aiden provides. But all in all, that's going to be the Black Friday review for you guys. Remember, I'm putting out 2 more videos, I do believe, today, which is going to be the bundle review, as well as whether or not you should be re-rolling on the support banner, and if you decide to re-roll on the support banner, what units you definitely need to think about re-rolling for on that support banner. So if this helped you guys out, make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button for all the Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, as well as FFBE content in general, or Final Fantasy content in general. If you haven't seen the cool creator collaboration that we did with the podcast tier-esque thing, definitely go check that out. It was a fun thing to make with a friend of mine. But until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one, and stay safe out.